Hi everybody, welcome to the soundtrack of my life. I'm Danny. Today we're going to do another mixtape. The theme of today's mixtape is drummers who have come out from behind the kit to become frontmen or lead singers. And so if you don't know how this works, basically what I do is I will make a 10-song mixtape. I cannot play the music here on the channel because lawsuits and copyright and all that good stuff. But what I will do is provide a Spotify link to the mix playlist down in the description. I will also provide the links to any YouTube videos for the songs in the description, so you guys can just click on the links, listen to the tunes, and I'll try to give you a little insight about a little behind the scenes knowledge and that kind of thing, a little trivia here and there as we go on. So before we get started, if you have not subscribed, hit the red subscribe button down below, and that will help me out a lot. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. It's a free subscription. You just hit the old bell. That will give you notifications of future videos when I put them out. And then hit the like button. Hit the big thumbs up for me. That helps me out a lot. So without any further ado, let's get straight on into our 10-song mixtape. First up is Jeffrey Osborne. Jeffrey Osborne was born in March of 1948, the youngest of 12 children. His father, Clarence, was a trumpet player who played with Lionel Hampton, Count Basie, Duke Ellington. And so in 1970, Jeffrey joined the band Love Men Limited with his older brother Billy. And soon after that, they shortened the name from Love Men Limited to LTD and became one of the top R&B bands of the late 70s. Jeffrey started with the band on drums, but eventually became the lead singer. In 1980, he left the band to start a solo career that included 5 gold or platinum albums. Now, the song I've picked for our mixtape today is one of his most famous, On the Wings of Love. It was the first single from his self-titled debut album and reached number 13 on the Billboard R&B chart and number 29 on the Hot 100. Next up in the mix, Mickey Dolenz. Mickey started his career as a child actor, but also had a love for music. He had his own rock group called Mickey and the One-Nighters in the early to mid 1960s, released a couple of singles, but didn't have a whole lot of success. That same year, he answered an audition for a new TV show about a rock group called the Monkees that was going to begin airing the following year. And he was not actually a drummer, but eventually they taught him how to play properly. He learned to play right-handed and left-footed because of a leg disease called Perthes that made his right leg weak. He and bandmate Davy Jones shared lead on several of the songs of the Monkees, most of them actually, with Mickey singing lead on some of the most famous Monkey tunes. The song that I included here on this mixtape was one of their 3 #1 records, Last Train to Clarksville. It was released August the 16th of 1966 and later was included on the group's 1966 self-titled album. Next up in the mix, Teddy Pendergrass. Now, Teddy was born Theodore DeReese Pendergrass on Sunday, March the 26th, 1950 in Philadelphia. He was an only child. He started playing drums and singing in church at age 10. Pendergrass played drums for several local Philadelphia bands, eventually becoming the drummer of the Cadillacs. In 1970, he was spotted by the Blue Notes founder, Melvin, who convinced Pendergrass to play drums in the group. Now, the Blue Notes were a 50s R&B vocal group, and Harold Melvin was the last of the band left, and they were trying to make a big comeback with some new members. And he got Teddy to play drums. However, during a performance, Pendergrass began singing along, and Melvin was really impressed by his vocals, so he made him the lead singer. He wrote a wave of success from 74 to 77 until Teddy left to pursue a solo career. And Teddy's solo career took off, and the media began referring to him as Black Elvis. He was at the peak of his popularity when, on March 18th, 1982, he was involved in a car crash. He lost control of his Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit. The car hit a guardrail, crossed into the oncoming lane, hit two trees, and Pendergrass suffered a spinal injury and spent the rest of his life as a quadriplegic. The song included here on the mix is from his Harold, Melvin, and the Blue Notes days, one of their most famous songs, Wake Up Everybody, the title track from their 1975 album. This song spent 2 weeks at number 1 on the Hot Soul Singles chart in early 1976, and it also enjoyed success on the pop charts, peaking at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. Next up in the mix, Walter Orange of the Commodores. Walter Orange was born on December 10th, 1946 in Jacksonville, Florida. In 1969, he was invited to join the Commodores to replace their original drummer, Andre Callahan, who had just left. At the time he got the offer from the Commodores, he also got an offer from jazz organist Bill Doggett to join his band. Now, Doggett offered him more money than the Commodores had, but he had already made a handshake agreement with the Commodores, and he didn't want to not be a man of his word, so he turned Doggett down and went with the Commodores, and he's been with them ever since. Originally sharing lead vocals with Lionel Richie, when Richie left the band to pursue his famous solo career, Walter became the frontman, and so the song I picked for the mix is a song that was one of the biggest Commodore hits of their career, and it's called Brick House. This song was released in August of 1977, peaked at number 5 on the U.S. Hot 100. And next up in the mix, Steven Tyler. Now, Steven was born Steven Victor Tallarico in New York City on March 26, 1948. Steven Tyler's father was a classical pianist and taught music at a local high school. When he was a teenager, he took up drums and played in a few bands while hanging out in Greenwich Village during the musical explosion of the late 1960s. It was during this time that he met Joe Perry and Tom Hamilton, and in 1970 they formed Aerosmith, with Tyler stepping out from behind the drum kit to become frontman. They brought in Joey Kramer to handle the drum duties, and has since become one of the biggest bands in rock and roll history. The song I picked for this mix is Same Old Song and Dance, released on March 19th, 1974 as the lead singer for their second studio album, Get Your Wings. All right, next up in the mix, Don Henley. Don Henley was born in Texas in 1947. He joined his high school band in the percussion section, and while still in high school, he and a friend started a band called Felicity. In 1969, their fellow Texan Kenny Rogers took an interest in Felicity. They changed their name to Shiloh and recorded a few songs for Rogers. Rogers helped sign the band to Amos Records and brought the band to Los Angeles in June of 1970. Now, Shiloh broke up a year later over creative differences, and Henley, along with his fellow Amos Records label mate Glenn Frey, were then recruited to be part of Linda Ronstadt's backing band, the Stone Ponies. Henley and Frey got along so well that they decided to end up forming their own band, and they called it the Eagles. All members of the Eagles sang, but it was Henley's voice that was featured on some of their biggest hits, such as Hotel California and Desperado. After the band broke up in 1980, Henley embarked on a very successful solo career. And the song I've picked for the mix today is one of his biggest solo hits in 1984, called The Boys of Summer. The song was written by Henley and Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It was peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Next up in the mix, Karen Carpenter. Now, Karen Carpenter was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and moved to Downey, California in 1963 with her family. She began to study the drums in high school and joined the Long Beach State Choir after she graduated. Her brother Richard, himself a piano music prodigy, was very impressed with his sister's musical talent and ability to catch on so quickly. He said that she would speedily maneuver the sticks as if she had been born in a drum factory. Richard was 3 years older than Karen, and together they formed the Richard Carpenter Trio with his college friend Wes Jacobs, a bassist, and Karen on drums. A&M Records signed the Carpenters to a recording contract in 1969. Karen started out as both the group's drummer and co-lead singer, and she originally sang all her vocals from behind the drum set. But because she was only 5'4", it was difficult for people in the audience to see Karen behind the kit. And they got some reviews complaining that they had no focal point during the live shows. And so Richard and manager Sherwin Bash persuaded Karen to get out from behind the kit and stand at the microphone to sing the band's hits while another musician played the drums. The Carpenters, with Karen as lead singer, became one of the best-selling artists of the 1970s. The song I picked out for this mix is Top of the World. Originally recorded and released on the duo's 1972 studio album, A Song for You, the song topped the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart in late 1973, becoming the duo's second of 3 #1 singles. Next up in the mix, Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl was born on January the 14th, 1969 in Warren, Ohio. When he was a child, Grohl's family moved to Springfield, Virginia. When Grohl was 7, his parents divorced, and he grew up subsequently with his mother. At the age of 12, he began to learn to play guitar. He grew tired of lessons and instead taught himself and eventually began playing in bands with friends. While in high school, Grohl played in several local bands, including a stint as a guitarist in a band called Freak Baby. It was during this period that Grohl taught himself to play drums. When Freak Baby kicked out its bass player, Grohl decided to switch to drums. Grohl said he taught himself to play drums by listening to Rush and punk rock records. In 1990, after the breakup of his band Scream, a friend of Dave's, Buzz Osborne of the Meat Puppets, informed him that Nirvana was looking for a drummer and gave Grohl the phone numbers of Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic. They subsequently invited Grohl to come to Seattle to audition for Nirvana, and Grohl was hired and soon joined the band full-time. Now, following the death of Kurt Cobain, Grohl couldn't see himself taking on the same role in another band because it brought back painful feelings of loss. It was just too new. So he formed a new band in which he was the lead singer and guitarist, and the Foo Fighters were born. The song I picked for this mix is My Hero. It was released in January 1998 as the third single from their second album, The Color and Shape. The song reached number 6 on the U.S. Billboard Alternative chart. Next up in the mix is Maurice White. White was born in Memphis, Tennessee on December the 19th, 1941, where he lived with his grandmother. And when he was a teenager, he moved to Chicago, where he studied at the Chicago Conservatory of Music and played drums in local nightclubs. He continued picking up drumming gigs on the side, and this eventually led him to a steady spot as a studio musician for Chess Records, the legendary Chicago record label, where he played drums on tracks from Etta James, Fontella Bass, Billy Stewart, Willie Dixon, Sonny Stitt, Ramsey Lewis, and a bunch of other people. He joined the Ramsey Lewis trio for nearly 3 years as their drummer. Now, he was very shy, and Ramsey had to encourage him to stand up to receive applause from the crowd. He moved to Los Angeles in 1969 to form his own band, initially called the Salty Peppers. He wanted a band that could play to big concert halls, the same halls that the rock acts were selling out. He wanted the band to be great musicians, but also wanted to be able to put on a show that would blow people away. He wanted the songs to spread a positive message of love and hope. The Salty Peppers became Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they achieved Maurice's dream of filling huge concert halls and selling millions of records. The song I picked for this mix is one of the biggest hits and the only #1 hit of their career, surprisingly enough, from 1975, Shining Star. The song came off Earth, Wind, and Fire's 1975 album, That's the Way of the World, and features the inspirational message that EWF became known for. It also won a Grammy for Best R&B Vocal by a Group. That brings us to our last song in the mix and our last of the drummers to become lead singers, Phil Collins. Now, Philip David Charles Collins was born on 30th of January 1951 in Chiswick, Middlesex, England. He was given a toy drum kit for Christmas when he was 5 and never stopped playing. He actually began his childhood career as an actor at the Barber Speak Stage School and won his first major role as the Artful Dodger in the London stage production of Oliver. He was an extra in the Beatles film A Hard Day's Night in 1964, one of the screaming teenagers during the television concert sequence. Collins' real love, however, was for music. His first record deal came as the drummer for Hickory with guitarist Ronnie Carroll and Gordon Smith and keyboardist Brian Chatton. After changing their name to Flaming Youth, they recorded an album, Arc 2, released in October of 1969 on Uni Records. And after a year of touring, the group disbanded in 1970. And by this time, Collins had played in the Cliff Charles Blues Band and auditioned for Vinegar Joe and Manfred Mann Chapter 3. He played percussion on Art of Dying by George Harrison for his album All Things Must Pass. In mid-1970, the rock band Genesis advertised for a drummer sensitive to acoustic music, following the departure of their drummer John Mayhew. In August of 1970, he was hired as the new drummer. Peter Gabriel was the frontman and lead singer of Genesis and had a cult following due to their prog rock style and Gabriel's way-out stage costumes. In August of 1975, following the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour, however, Gabriel left Genesis. The band placed an advertisement for a new lead singer, and after a lengthy auditioning process during which Phil Collins sang backup vocals for all the people auditioning, they just decided to make Phil the lead singer during the recording of their album A Trick of the Tail. The album was a commercial and critical success, reaching number 3 in the UK charts, 31 in the US, and Rolling Stone wrote that Genesis had managed to turn the possible catastrophe of Gabriel's departure into their first broad-based American success. In the 1980s, Collins made several solo records as well, beginning with Face Value in 1981, which vaulted him to one of the most recognizable faces and voices of the decade. He and Genesis continued to record together as well as the solo albums and went on to sell millions and millions of records in both solo and with Genesis. The song I picked for this mix comes from the 1984 movie of the same name, Against All Odds. The single reached number 2 in the United Kingdom and hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States, the first of 7 U.S. number 1s for Collins in his solo career. And so that's it. Those are 10 songs from drummers who became lead singers or frontmen. I hope you enjoy the mix. I hope you enjoy the information. Once again, subscribe down below if you haven't already. Hit the like button and hit the bell for notifications of future videos. The links to all the videos are going to be in the description. All you got to do is click on them and you can listen to all these songs that I'm talking about if you haven't heard them or if you just want to hear them again. And so that's it for the soundtrack of my life's mixtape of drummers who became lead singers. And hopefully we'll have another mixtape for you soon. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you soon.